woke in the legislature. We fight the woke in the schools. We fight the woke in the corporations. Freedom is here to stay.
Ladies and gentlemen, introducing the governor of the great free state of Florida, Ron DeSantis.
Well, aren't you glad to be a Republican in the free state of Florida? And aren't you glad that there's a heck of a lot more of us than there are of them now? We didn't used to be able to say that. And aren't you glad that you have a new warrior fighting for you as the chief financial officer of Florida? This guy's incredible. Blaze is going to do a great job. I'll tell you, it's gone so quick we were 300,000 in the hole in 2018 in terms of voter registration. Now we're like 1.3 million more Republicans than Democrats. I knew we were beating them, but I didn't realize we were beating them that bad. I may need to task Joseph Ladapo, our Surgeon General, for determining whether there's still signs of life in the Democratic Party in here. Of course, when you stand for coddling criminals, idealizing illegal aliens, and weaponizing woke ideology, you deserve to lose, and you are losing in this state. And they now have the perfect candidate running for mayor of New York City. That is what the Democratic Party stands for today, and we should make sure that they own that, not just in Florida, but all around the country. And the thing about it is, leftism is the problem with all these jurisdictions that have collapsed. San Francisco, Chicago, New York, California, you name it. It's the leftism that fails. And so the free state of Florida, one of the reasons why we are the free state of Florida is because we stop the left in its tracks. Buddy, you got to do a better job than that if you're going to come here and interrupt. That was weak. That was pathetic. I've had Antifa charge me on live TV. That was a weak performance. So you have the left, which is really, I think, the source of the political ills that you see around the country. Our job in Florida is to stop it in its tracks. In fact, as a leader, there's a lot of things I got to do as governor, and we see different things that happen. Obviously, we had major hurricanes last year. We have sometimes disorder. There's a lot of things you have to do. But at this point in time, any leader worth their salt must protect the people they represent from the pathologies of the political left. When they come for our kids, we stop them. When they demand money for their schemes, we defund them. When leftist politicians flout the law, we remove them from their posts. I don't know what you think you're accomplishing. You're making an ass of yourself. So I will say again, when the left comes for our kids, we stop them. When the left demands money for their various schemes, we defund them. And when leftist politicians flout the law, we remove them from their posts. Now, our policy is very simple when it comes to the left. We win and they lose. And win we have. We beat the left on COVID. If it were up to them, you would have been locked down, force jabbed, and force masked for months and years on end. We stood up, and many times all alone, and took the arrows, and we were right to do it, and the state is better off because we stood up and we did it. We beat the left on immigration. When I became governor, one of my first orders of business was to work with the legislature to finally, after all these years, ban sanctuary cities in the state of Florida. And we never stopped. We've enacted the strongest illegal immigration legislation in the country. There's a little bit of a tug of war going on. They were trying to take her one way and then the other. There you go. So, not only did we ban sanctuary cities, but we've enacted the strongest legislation anywhere in the country to combat illegal immigration, including sending people to the border when Biden opened the border to help out Texas, and even flying illegal aliens to beautiful Martha's Vineyard. Now, they didn't like it when we did that. Now, they said they were a sanctuary jurisdiction. The minute you had 50 show up, all hell broke loose. They declared a state of emergency. They called out the National Guard. They got those illegals off their vineyard very, very quickly. They want an open border for you, but they didn't want to have to live under the consequences of the policies that they champion. Now, when President Trump got elected in November, this was our time to finally win on immigration once and for all. We saw what happened with 4 years of Biden having an open border. That has been shut, and the border is now closed, which is a great achievement. But that doesn't take care of all the millions and millions of people that have come here illegally, and not just under Biden, for many decades. And so the president pledged to enact the strongest mass deportation program in American history. But I knew as a governor, just logistically, that was not going to be able to be working if the states and the local law enforcement were not participating with this. And so I called a special session of the Florida legislature at the beginning of the year. And I said, as soon as the president takes office, we have to have policies in place that say in Florida, all state and local law enforcement agencies must work with DHS, and we must have deportations of people that are here illegally. Now, I think it's important to point out I just hope that you charged him to get in here. If he wants to do that, you take his money. That's fine. I hope he didn't get in for free, though. So we called the special session. We said we have to have all hands on deck. And I just think it should be pointed out that because, we've got these big Republican majorities, I was not met with support on that by the Speaker of the House. The Speaker of the House said that it was not urgent, it was premature, that we could deal with it months down the line. The hell we can. Biden let in 10 million. We needed to deal with it on day one. And so we made sure that happened. Now, he tried to pass a bill that I had to veto that would have stripped our ability to do what we need to do and actually would have shut down our current operations, and all the things you've seen about in the news, all of that would have been illegal. So I vetoed that legislation, and we got good legislation in place. But let me tell you, what he passed was one of the worst pieces of legislation that Republicans have ever passed in the state of Florida. I was right to veto it, and you're better off as a result of having vetoed it. Now, which brings us to the topic du jour, our unprecedented efforts to help with the deportation efforts that you've seen under the Trump administration. Now, we've been doing a lot. I've got all my guys on board at the state. We now have all local and state agencies have to do this. So you see even the mayor of Orange County, Jerry Demings, he's got to get on board because the legislation we had would have meant he could have gotten removed from office. And obviously I'm willing to do that. So we did that, which was really good. That's why Florida has more of these agreements than any other state by a country mile. But you know, what DHS was telling us is you guys are arresting illegals faster than we can process them. We don't have any place to put them. We can't do this pace yet because Biden really neutered the agency. So they asked us to help with that. And so when they said we need help, within a week later, we were able to stand up Alligator Alcatraz down in South Florida. And, you know, I just have to say, like, you know, some of these people, like, you know, the Democrats, they go down, they caravan down to Alligator Alcatraz. They do all these things, this bells and whistles. They're doing all this stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, man, I've never seen you fight that hard for an American citizen. I've never seen you go to that length. But you really believe that people should just be able to come illegally. Many of them have already been ordered to be deported through our legal process, and they still think that they should be able to stay, even though we've seen all the problems that's happened. But then they'll complain because the air conditioning's too cold. Or they'll complain that the ham sandwiches aren't toasted and that they're cold. I mean, look, it's like, you know, Jimmy John's used to never have toasted subs, and they became one of the best chains in the country. So this idea, I'm like, and, you know, Jay Collins was up here. I can tell you, when we were deployed in like Iraq, we didn't get toasted subs. That's not how it works. So you have this crazy stuff where they're trying to make this of an issue, but the reality is flights are now leaving there. You have hundreds and hundreds of people already. The pace is picking up, and Florida is going to continue to lead the way because we need strong borders and we need to make sure we uphold the rule of law. Now, we've also beat the left on crime and on rioting. You remember what happened during those Floyd riots back in 2020. We didn't allow that to happen in the state of Florida, and we even passed legislation saying that you're going to be protected if the mob comes after you. You have the right to defend yourself in your car, at your home, in public. You have a right. We're not going to let the inmates run the asylum. We ban local governments from defunding the police. And, you know, maybe a lot in Florida wouldn't have done it because it's gotten so red. But don't tell me you can't have one little blue outpost that has 3 bozos on some city council that might do something stupid. Well, we're not going to let you cut off your nose to spite your face. So you aren't defending law enforcement in the state of Florida. We've also blocked all jailbreak legislation, California-style crime policies where they let people out, they let them commit crimes. You know, we actually have had that proposed in Florida, and it's wrong. And as governor, I was really the bulwark to stop that, and I'll continue to do that. And then we saw the scourge of Soros DAs, and I remain the only governor in the country who has removed Soros DAs from their position. We have also successfully waged a war and defeated the woke mind virus in the state of Florida. We are the first state to eliminate DEI from our public university system. We were the state responsible for nuking ESG in the pensions and in the businesses. We eliminated critical race theory, first in the country to do that in our K-12 education. And we stopped the brutal practice of doing sex change operations on kids. It was wrong then when we did it. It's wrong now, and we were right then when we did it. And of course, you know, I hear a lot of people talking about women's sports a lot now. Just so people, like, we did that years ago in Florida. I mean, like 5 years ago, we took care of that. You have a right to compete in all of these things. We've also beat the left on education. And some of that means defeating the teachers' unions, who've been a huge problem, and they're very partisan, and they have an agenda. And when COVID was going on, I required that all schools remain open. and they sued me to try to close the schools. They wanted kids out of school for a year, and that would have happened had we not stood up to them. We also did universal school choice, so every single parent in Florida can go to the school of their choice, private school, charter school, you name it. And we've also done paycheck protection against school union, because what they'll do is these union people will go in and they'll demand that a teacher sign these forms, and then they deduct the money and it goes into the union, and what do they spend it on? Leftist politics. Most of these teachers don't want that. So now in Florida, no automatic deduction of school union dues are allowed. First state in the country to get that right. And we have done more than any other state in the country to stand up for the rights of parents when it comes to education. You have the right to direct the education and upbringing of your kids, and you have every right to know what curriculum is being used in your school. And you also have a right to send your kids to school in Florida without them being taught that they were born in the wrong body or that their gender is a choice. We stood up. We even had a little skirmish with a company down the road from here, some of you may have heard of. A lot of people said you can't do that in Florida and live to tell about it, but we were right and they were wrong, and we won that fight, and we're glad that we did. We're also leading the effort to reform in a conservative direction higher education. And one of the things that we've done, which I don't think any other state has done, we were the first to eliminate DEI. That's important. But now in Florida, all tenured professors must undergo review every 5 years and can be terminated for poor performance. Another thing that we won on, and Blaise Ingoglia mentioned it, you can win these elections, and ideally you have elected officials who do what they told you they would do, which for by and large you've had in Florida, not exactly what the House of Representatives agenda this past year. Let's just be frank. The Speaker of the House, as his honored guest when he got sworn in, did he have somebody that's been a part of all these wins? You know who he had? Morgan and Morgan. That was the honored guest. Is that what you voted for? No, it's not. But that's an aside. So by and large, we've had people do what they say they're going to do, deliver big results, and Florida has really been the model, and I think it's great. But here's the thing. You can win elections. You can have people actually fulfill their promises, which we've had in Florida by and large, but if the left can spend $250 million running these ballot initiatives, then they can turn us into California through the back door, without ever having controlled the legislature, without even ever being able to elect a governor again, and we could wake up in 10 years, and all of a sudden, we've got a left-wing state. And so Amendments 3 and 4 were really a big test for this state, because they poured $275 million into those two amendments. And I will thank the Republican Party of Florida, I will thank Evan Power, and all of you who stood up against it, because the party played an important role in defeating those amendments. And both of those amendments, more than 70% of Republicans voted no on both of those amendments. And that's because we all worked together to do it. But this is a danger going forward. We did pass a reform, but it was later than it should have been done, and so we may end up teed up with some more of this in 2026. We'll see what happens, but that is a major threat to the future of this state. So what are the results of winning all those fights? Look, I want to win, I want to beat the left, but does that lead to better outcomes? Does that lead to things? Well, just look at the tape. We're #1 economy in the country 3 years in a row, by CNBC, no less, who they probably don't want to rank Florida #1. #1 in higher education, #1 in education freedom, usually #1, 2, or 3 in overall education, #1 in new business formations, #1 in entrepreneurship, #1 in talent development, and we have a crime rate that's at a 50-year low. That is results. That matters to the people that sent us here. And if you look at how we've done fiscal, budget and debt and taxes. Well, obviously, we have no income tax. I'm going to talk about tax a little bit in a minute. But the size of government in Florida, your government in Florida has the lowest number of government workers per capita in the entire United States of America. The state of New York, we now have 3 or 4 million more residents than New York State does, and yet our budget is less than half the size of New York State's budget. Since I've been governor, we've more than tripled the state's rainy day fund. In fact, our rainy day fund is maxed out. We're not allowed under the Constitution to put any more money into the rainy day fund because we've stocked it so much. And we shouldn't put much more because I would rather do property tax cuts and do other things like that to help you. If you take the entire history of Florida, all 180 years, and you take all the debt that was accumulated over that period, just since I've been governor, by the end of this fiscal year, we will have paid off almost half of that debt for the 180-year period. And we now have the lowest per capita debt in the entire United States of America. But we're doing big things. We just raised salaries for highway patrol and state law enforcement. We're doing stuff for teacher pay increases. We have universal school choice. We're doing infrastructure improvements. We're doing Everglades restoration. We're doing all those things, but we're doing it within the context of a budget that spends less than it did the year before, and that budget a year before spent less than it did the year before that. So we are showing how it's done in terms of low debt, big budget surpluses, and cutting taxes. Now, what's left on the agenda? I mean, when I remember people would ask me after a lot of this stuff's gotten done over the years, man, can you do any more? You're always out doing all. Yes, we can. And if you really want the state of Florida to be the free state of Florida, yes, we fought the left. We fight the ideology. We have no income tax in Florida. Which means you don't have to file a tax return, you earn what you want, and it's none of the state's business. But we have this situation with local governments that are taxing people's properties. And, that's something that's always happened throughout American history. It's honestly, the founding fathers did not think taxing property was the most efficient way to do it. They preferred consumption taxes, but nevertheless, it is what it is. Now, in normal circumstances, it's something you don't like, but may be tolerable depending on the circumstances. But what's happened now is people's property values are going up. And when people buy a new home, they get this high tax basis. So all of a sudden, these local governments are getting a huge increase in property tax revenue. And so you have some governments, and by the way, we are doging local governments like Broward and Gainesville and some of these, because you look at Broward, they've had no population increase in the last 4 or 5 years, but they've had a massive budget increase because they have all this property tax value. So here's my principle that I operate on. Home ownership, private property ownership, means that you actually own it free and clear of the government. You should not have to pay rent to the government to be able to stay on your property. And so we're going to have an opportunity to put that question on the ballot, and we're working on formulating it, and you're going to hear a lot, it can't be done. It can be done. And obviously, we're going to do it in a way that's going to be very doable, but that's going to give meaningful relief to people in ways that'll be permanent. And so name me another state that has defeated the left so thoroughly, that has law and order, that has all these options for education, that has no income tax. So you can't even name that right there. But then if you throw on, you don't have to pay property tax. Is there anything that could be better than that to be able to do? So that is what we've got to get done. They've got to get it on the ballot through the legislature, but we are working on doing that, and we can be a model for reform for the other thing we're doing, and the legislature, I think, has done a good job of passing proposed amendments to the federal Constitution under Article 5 of the Constitution. Now, here's the thing. We see the problems in D.C. We see the problems in the swamp. We see the problems in Congress. And for as hard as President Trump has worked and as much as he's gotten done, honestly, Congress, it's like, come on, guys. Like, what's going on here? They're adding debt. They're doing this stuff. And here's the thing. it's not going to change unless the incentives are changed. And I think the only way to do that is you need term limits for members of Congress, and you need a balanced budget amendment to the federal Constitution. Don't let them bankrupt the country. Now, we have certified those amendments from the state of Florida. 28 states have done balanced budget amendment. I think it's 12 that's done term limits, but that's going very quickly, and we're working hard with very quickly with that, and I think you're going to see that build support. But we, the people in our individual states, have the authority that the Founding Fathers put in the Constitution to make these positive reforms without having to go through Congress at all. I don't think that Congress will ever enact the type of reforms that are going to need to be done to truly get this government on the right path in terms of fiscal and in terms of debt. So Florida's leading on that. I'm working with other states on both of those. You're going to continue to see more progress on that. And I think we have to do it because I don't think that we're going to be able to have this thing be sustainable over the next quarter of a century if we don't have some constraints imposed on them. And the other thing they need to do, we should not have these congressmen doing this insider trading where they're making massive windfalls. And Pelosi may be the queen of it, but she's not the only one. So they need to clean that up. So I just leave you with this thought. We're here. We've got a 1.3 million registration advantage. You have every single statewide office has a Republican. We have almost a 3-to-1 majority in the Florida House. We have, almost almost 2/3 majority, more than 2/3 in the Florida Senate. We've got 20 Republicans in our congressional delegation. Now, I did have to veto the legislature's map, and so I get this one, but be that as it may. And so you have that. So you can even see, and then I think in the counties, I think we won 62 of 67 counties, including Palm Beach, Miami-Dade, all this stuff. So you could sit here and be like, yep, we've done it. And my message is just don't get high on your own supply. You're only as good as what you're doing for people going forward. There's nothing permanent in politics. People are up, and then they say, oh, there's going to be Republican forever. And then all of a sudden, things shift, and other people can do. I don't think the threat to the Republican Party of Florida right now is as much that the Democrats are going to get their act together than that we, as Republicans, or some Republicans, fumble the ball. And here's my thing, bottom line. A political party is not an end in of itself. If you're a Republican just because you like the cocktail parties, you do all that, look, it's a free country. I'm not saying you can't. That's not why I'm a Republican. I'm a Republican because I think it's a vehicle to deliver policies that I believe in and that can make people's lives better. That's what it's all about. So you can have an R by your name, and I guess, that's obviously better than having a D. At least you had the sense to do that. But if you get elected with an R by your name, that doesn't give you license to smuggle leftism into the Republican Party. It doesn't give you license to do things that are not consistent with what got us here and what led to these big numbers. Because I can tell you what led to the big numbers more than anything, the results that we produced drew a sharp contrast with the Democrats and the left. And like President Reagan said, it's about bold colors, not pale pastels. Everybody in this state who's voted knows that there's a huge difference between our party and the Democratic Party. If you want your kids indoctrinated in gender ideology, you're voting Democrat. You're not going to vote for us. That's very clear in people's mind. If you believe that being tough on crime and law and order is important to you, you're voting for us. You are not voting for them. If you believe in education freedom, you're voting for us. You're not voting for them. Everybody knows because we've drawn a very clear contrast. And we've drawn the clear contrast by being very strong on conservative policy, being strong conservatives, not being wishy-washy, not just sitting there and trying to cut the difference, not making it muddled to where voters don't know. The reason we've grown the party is because people know you stand for something. And I think the way that the party will contract, because sometimes people say, oh, let's bring in leftists into the party, we're expanding the party. No, you're expanding the political class of the party. You're not expanding the voter base of the party by doing that. In fact, you're more likely to alienate voters by doing that. So yes, I'll bring in as many voters who are going to believe in what we're doing, but I'm not going to dilute the message, and I'm not going to create confusion in the minds of voters that maybe these guys don't really mean that they're conservative. Maybe these guys really don't mean what they say we're going to mean. So have the bold contrast, have the sharp contrast with the left, and we will continue to win elections. I want Florida to be ruby red. I don't want us to revert back to some purple haze like we've had in the past. And that's the task that we've had. And I'll just close by saying this. Our founding fathers understood that small r Republican government is fragile. They understood. In fact, when they went to Philadelphia to draft the Constitution, they didn't just show up willy-nilly. Like, they had studied the history of every single republic in the history of mankind. And they tried to draw lessons from those experiments. And there was really only one thing that united every single every single Republican form of government that had ever existed in the history of humankind, and it was this. Every single one of them had failed. And so they understood it fell to this country, the United States of America, to determine once and for all. Can people really govern themselves? Can we have a society based on the idea that our rights come from God, not from the government? That government's role is to protect the rights that we already possess? That you should have an open field and fair chance to realize your dreams and make the most out of those God-given ability? That you could have a written constitution that divided power so that no one was too powerful in government? Could you have the rule of law rather than the rule of men? These are all questions that they sought to answer. And they gave us a great constitution. We've had a lot of people that have fought for this country over the years, in the political realm, but also wearing the uniform. But they understood it was fragile. Benjamin Franklin walked out of that convention. He was asked, did you give us a republic or a monarchy? And his answer was a republic if you can keep it. You can have the best Declaration of Independence in the world. You can have the best Constitution in the world. These things do not run on autopilot. They require every generation of Americans to step up, be heard, and fight for what matters to this country. And that may mean putting on a uniform and losing your leg like Senator Collins. It may just mean that you go as a mom that's concerned about what's happening in your schools, and you're willing to stand up and speak the truth, knowing that they're going to attack you and knowing that they're going to smear you. There's a lot of different ways that you can play your part. But that's what we must do. We must continue the fight. I'm proud of what Florida's been able to achieve. I'm proud that so many other states have been able to emulate us, but there is nothing certain in this world. There is no such thing as a permanent political majority. We've got to keep fighting. As fast as it got the way it's gotten, it can go that much faster back in the other direction. So let's go forward and fight for the people that sent us here. Let's deliver big results for them, and let's make sure that this state remains the free state of Florida. Thank you all. God bless you. Get some more protesters than that. It's kind of weak. They could have done a lot better.